The young and the restless spoilers in the flickering twilight of Genoa City's tangled secrets. The revelation that Summer was not Nick's biological daughter set off a chain reaction of questions that no one had anticipated. The once stable foundation of long-held beliefs began to crumble, and every whispered doubt grew louder. Who, then, was Summer's true father? With every inquiry and suspicion mounting like an avalanche, all eyes turned to Phyllis, a woman burdened with a lifetime of choices and unspoken truths. Phyllis, with trembling resolve, knew that the time had come to lay bare the secret that had haunted her for years. The weight of her own misgivings and the legacy of deception pressed down on her. She understood that honesty, even if it shattered lives, was the only way to navigate this storm of revelations. As she prepared to reveal the truth, a lingering question hovered in the air: how would Summer, now a mature woman who had weathered her share of turmoil, handle the news? Would her heart, resilient and battle-scarred, accept the truth and continue to beat for those who loved her, or would it be torn asunder by betrayal? For Summer, the news of not being Nick's daughter was an echo of her past, a reminder that blood, while it may define some connections, does not necessarily dictate the bonds of the heart. She had grown into a strong, independent woman, hardened yet compassionate, with a spirit unyielding in the face of adversity. Regardless of who her biological father was, Summer had always believed that love was not confined to the narrow parameters of genetics. However, the revelation promised to be anything but simple. The looming dilemma was twofold. If Nick, grappling with the shock and hurt of the revelation, chose to abandon her, Summer's wounded pride would transform into a seething, vengeful fury. In her mind, betrayal would be repaid with bitterness, a wound too deep to ever fully heal. On the other hand, if Nick's love was steadfast enough to endure the storm of shattered illusions and familial discord, then perhaps Summer's heart, though scarred, might learn to love him again. His unconditional acceptance could remind her that true kinship transcends the mere strands of DNA. Yet, as Phyllis's confession echoed through the hallowed halls of their shared history, a bombshell was dropped, a name that turned every assumption on its head. The truth was unveiled: Jack was, in fact, Summer's biological father. This revelation was more than a mere twist in a convoluted family saga. It was a seismic shift that threatened to upend every relationship Summer had ever known. Jack, a man whose presence had always been a source of both admiration and controversy, was now intricately tied to a secret that none could have foreseen. For Summer, this revelation was nothing short of cataclysmic. It wasn't simply the unmasking of a long-buried secret, it was an existential blow that forced her to reconsider the very fabric of her identity. Suddenly, everything she had believed about her family, her lineage, and even her own choices was thrown into question. The knowledge that Jack was her father not only challenged her understanding of herself but also cast an ominous shadow over her budding relationship with Kyle, a relationship that had grown with tender affection and mutual respect. With Jack revealed as her biological father, the unthinkable became clear: Summer and Kyle were, in fact, siblings by blood, a realization that turned love into an unbridgeable chasm of taboo and moral conflict. The discovery ignited a tempest of emotions. The horrified murmurs that followed were not just the product of scandal, but of a deep-seated fear of the irreversible consequences of hidden truths coming to light. Summer's heart, once open to the possibility of a future filled with hope and genuine affection, now found itself shackled by a chain of irrevocable fate. The revelation was so damning, so soul-crushing, that it compelled her to reconsider her deepest desires and the life she had painstakingly built. To love Kyle under these circumstances was to flirt with an unthinkable transgression, a betrayal of the bonds of kinship that no heart, however tender, could easily forgive. Amid this chaos, questions swirled like autumn leaves in a restless wind. Who had orchestrated such a devastating narrative? Was it fate, a cruel twist of destiny that sought to punish those who dared to love beyond the boundaries of convention? Or was there a hidden hand at work, a manipulator in the shadows who meticulously wove this intricate web of secrets and lies for reasons known only to themselves? As the news spread, it was evident that this was more than a simple matter of mistaken parentage. It was a labyrinth of intertwined relationships, each thread pulled taut by years of concealment and deceit. Phyllis's decision to reveal the truth was not taken lightly. it was an act of both desperation and courage, a desperate bid to reclaim authenticity in a world where truth had long been a rare commodity. Yet, in doing so, she had set in motion events that threatened to tear apart the delicate tapestry of relationships that had defined their lives for decades. In the wake of the revelation, Summer found herself at a crossroads. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty and heartache. Her world, once vibrant and full of promise, was now colored by shades of gray, betrayal, regret, and the heavy burden of knowing that the love she had once held so dearly might have been built on a foundation of lies. The looming presence of Jack's identity as her father forced her to reevaluate every memory, every tender moment shared with Kyle, now recast in the harsh light of forbidden reality. Yet, even as the storm raged within her, Summer's resilience began to emerge from the depths of her despair. The turmoil, as devastating as it was, also carried with it the seeds of transformation. She began to see that while the truth could shatter illusions, it also paved the way for new beginnings. The challenge before her was not merely to survive the fallout of this revelation, but to forge a new identity, one that embraced the complexity of her past while daring to dream of a future unburdened by inherited sins. In the midst of these emotional battles, the broader question loomed large over everyone involved: who was the mastermind behind this intricate and devastating plot twist? There was a palpable sense that every relationship, every betrayal, every secret had been manipulated by forces unseen, guiding the fates of those in Genoa City with an almost preternatural precision. The intricate dance of power and deception that had led to this moment raised more questions than it answered. Had someone deliberately engineered these events, using the truth as a tool to dismantle established bonds and create chaos? Or was it the natural consequence of a family steeped in secrets, where the truth, once long suppressed, could no longer be contained? For the citizens of Genoa City, and especially for those closest to Summer, this was a moment of reckoning. It was a time when the blurred lines between loyalty and betrayal, love and duty, were forced into stark relief. Nick's role, once that of a devoted father figure, now faced a trial by fire. Would his unwavering love be strong enough to mend the rift that the truth had created, or would the revelation drive him away, leaving Summer to navigate the treacherous landscape of her identity alone? The ensuing days were marked by heated debates, tearful confrontations, and quiet moments of introspection. Conversations that once flowed easily were now punctuated by long silences and guarded glances. Each character, whether willingly or unwillingly, was drawn into the vortex of uncertainty. The revelation had not only upended personal relationships but had also forced the community to confront its own notions of family and identity. In a world where secrets had long reigned supreme, the emergence of the truth was both a curse and a blessing, a painful reminder of past transgressions, yet also an opportunity to rebuild on a foundation of honesty. As Summer grappled with the enormity of her newfound reality, a glimmer of determination shone through the darkness. She realized that while the past could not be undone, the future was still unwritten. The path ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, littered with emotional pitfalls and difficult decisions. Yet, in the quiet moments of reflection, she began to understand that her identity was not solely defined by the circumstances of her birth, but by the choices she made and the love she embraced. In the end, the story of Summer's discovery was a microcosm of life itself, a complex interplay of love, betrayal, and redemption. It was a reminder that while the past may cast long shadows, it is our capacity for resilience and transformation that ultimately defines who we are. And as Genoa City braced itself for the repercussions of this seismic revelation, one truth remained undeniable: in the tangled web of relationships, every secret eventually finds its way into the light. Who had spun this elaborate tale? That question lingered like a mystery waiting to be unraveled, a puzzle with pieces scattered across the hearts and minds of everyone affected. The answer, perhaps, lay not in a single villain or mastermind, but in the collective legacy of choices made over decades. In the intricate dance of destiny, every character had played a part, and the truth, in all its brutal beauty, was now impossible to ignore. Thus, as the sun set on yet another turbulent day in Genoa City, Summer stood at the precipice of a new beginning, a future where she would have to reconcile the past with the promise of tomorrow. And in that quiet moment of resolve, she realized that while blood may bind us in unexpected ways, it is the heart's capacity to forgive, to endure, and ultimately to love that determines the true measure of a person. This narrative weaves together the key elements of the plot, drawing out the emotional, psychological, and relational ramifications of the revelations. It explores not only the immediate fallout of Phyllis's confession but also the broader implications for every character caught in the web of truth, deception, and destiny. In the wake of the earth-shattering revelation that Summer was not Nick's biological daughter, the quest for truth spiraled into a deeper, darker investigation that threatened to unravel the fabric of every relationship in Genoa City. The unexpected twist had raised more questions than answers, and now, with mounting suspicion and seething resentment, the only way forward was to uncover the truth by any means necessary. It was decided DNA tests would be conducted not only on Summer, but also on all the men who had ever loved Phyllis, including Victor, Jack, Nick, and even Adam. The decision to test the blood of those men, once linked irrevocably by the tangled web of romance and deceit, was as controversial as it was inevitable. In a series of clandestine meetings and hushed consultations, plans were laid out. The DNA samples were to be collected discreetly, without alerting the potential conspirators to the fact that the very foundations of their past relationships were about to be shaken. Each test was more than just a scientific inquiry, it was a weapon aimed at unearthing long-buried secrets and exposing the truth of Summer's parentage. Phyllis, the woman who had always been the fulcrum of chaos and complexity in their lives, remained nonchalant about the identity of Summer's true father. In her eyes, the truth was secondary to one undeniable fact: Summer was her daughter, and that was all that truly mattered. The revelations that might emerge from the tests were irrelevant to her. She was not driven by a desire to uncover every hidden detail of her past. Instead, her focus was singular and unyielding. Her maternal bond with Summer was all that counted. Yet, the truth, like an insistent specter, demanded to be acknowledged. For Summer, however, the results of these DNA tests were far from a mere scientific formality. They were the key to unlocking a labyrinth of betrayals, deceptions, and shattered dreams. The discovery that she was not Nick's daughter had already set her on a path of intense internal conflict. How could fate be so cruel as to tear apart the bonds she believed in? Summer's anguish deepened when she learned that Nick, the man she had once considered a steadfast father figure, had cast her aside the moment he discovered that the child he had raised with love was not, in fact, his own flesh and blood. This abandonment ignited a burning anger within her, a hatred that grew with every whispered rumor and every unspoken regret. Driven by a desire for retribution, Summer resolved to exact revenge on everyone who had played a part in her life's tragic script. The betrayal felt personal, not only to Nick but also to every man who had been entwined with Phyllis over the years. Victor, with his commanding presence and imposing authority, Jack, the man whose secret had already rocked her world, and even Adam, whose quiet involvement in Phyllis's past added another layer of complexity to the saga, all became targets in the eyes of a daughter scorned. Each of these men represented a fragment of the shattered identity she now wrestled with, and each bore a piece of the guilt and deception that had brought her to this dark crossroads. The DNA tests were more than an investigation, they were a reckoning. As the samples were analyzed in secret laboratories, tension built in every corner of Genoa City. Rumors spread like wildfire, and suspicion took root among friends and foes alike. The revelation of each test result would not only determine the biological ties of the past, but would also dictate the future of relationships long thought to be unbreakable. Every whispered conversation, every furtive glance, and every moment of silence in the wake of these revelations added to the storm of emotions swirling around Summer. Summer's own turmoil was palpable. Once a woman who had embraced life with fierce independence, she now found herself teetering on the edge of despair and fury. The question of her true paternity was no longer a matter of simple curiosity, it had become a symbol of every injustice she had suffered. Her heart was hardened by the realization that love could be so easily betrayed, and that trust, once shattered, was nearly impossible to rebuild. The betrayal by Nick, in particular, stung with a venomous bitterness. How could someone who had been so integral to her life, who had nurtured her and given her hope, so casually discard her when the truth was revealed? With every passing day, as the results of the DNA tests began to emerge, Summer's resolve hardened. She could no longer sit idly by and allow fate to dictate her destiny. The tests, it seemed, would not simply answer the question of who her biological father was, they would also serve as the catalyst for her long-awaited revenge. Each test result was a piece of a puzzle that, when assembled, would expose the full extent of the betrayal. The shockwaves from the revelations were bound to ripple through every corner of her world, upending relationships and exposing the ugly truth behind the facades of those she once loved. In the midst of this emotional maelstrom, Summer's inner voice grew louder, urging her to reclaim control of her narrative. She began to meticulously plan her next moves, determined to confront each man responsible for her pain. Her strategy was not driven by a desire to simply settle scores, it was a calculated effort to strip away the layers of deceit that had enveloped her life. Summer's path to retribution was lined with memories of neglect and abandonment, each one a reminder of the love that was promised but never delivered. Her anger, once a simmering ember, now roared like an inferno that threatened to consume everything in its path. In the dark corners of her mind, Summer's thoughts churned with questions. How could destiny be so cruel? Why had the one man she had trusted implicitly, Nick, turned his back on her when she needed him most? And most importantly, who among those who had loved Phyllis was truly responsible for this web of lies? As each DNA result was revealed, the layers of her past began to peel away, exposing the raw, unfiltered truth. The results painted a picture more intricate than anyone had imagined, revealing unexpected alliances and long-hidden connections that challenged everything Summer had ever believed about her family. The revelations not only confirmed suspicions but also shattered the delicate equilibrium that had once governed their lives. Victor, the towering figure of power and control, found himself under scrutiny, his past romantic entanglements with Phyllis now casting long shadows over his present. Jack, whose connection to Summer had been a devastating secret, was forced to confront the reality that his hidden role in her life was now an open wound. Nick, whose abandonment had left a scar too deep to heal, now faced the consequences of his actions as the truth was laid bare. And Adam, the quiet participant in this tangled affair, emerged as a wild card whose true involvement was shrouded in mystery. For Phyllis, the storm of revelations was of little consequence. Her primary concern was the unwavering bond with the daughter she had raised, regardless of the biological ties that might or might not exist. In her eyes, Summer was always her daughter, and no amount of scientific data could change that. Yet, even as she dismissed the significance of the DNA tests, the results held the power to unravel years of carefully constructed lies. Phyllis's indifference was a stark contrast to the explosive emotions simmering within Summer, a dichotomy that underscored the divergent paths of love, loyalty, and betrayal in their lives. In a climactic moment that would forever alter the course of their intertwined fates, Summer finally confronted the men who had been complicit in the web of deceit. With the DNA test results clutched in her hand, she stood before them, eyes blazing with the fury of a betrayed soul. The confrontation was not a mere demand for answers, it was an indictment of a legacy of betrayal that had robbed her of a simple, unblemished identity. Each word, each accusation, cut through the air like a dagger, exposing the vulnerabilities and hidden truths of those who once claimed to love her. Her vendetta was clear and unyielding. Summer vowed to dismantle the lives of those who had contributed to her shattered reality, to hold them accountable for every moment of hurt and every act of abandonment. The path ahead was one of destruction and retribution, a path that would test her resolve and force her to confront the darkest corners of her own heart. As the echoes of her accusations faded into the charged silence of that fateful confrontation, one undeniable truth emerged: Summer was no longer the innocent, naive daughter who had once hoped for unconditional love. She had transformed into a force of nature, a woman determined to reclaim her identity, even if it meant tearing down the very pillars of the world she had once trusted.